Welcome to On the Record. Data centers have been a hot button topic, not just here in the 4 states, but across the nation. In New York, state lawmakers are considering a moratorium on them for at least a year. But that measure has some hurdles to clear before it becomes law. One of those is the clock. James Ford from our sister station in New York City has more.
They can be massive facilities that power and deliver AI. Data centers provide a service that many people use, with the potential for AI services growing. At the same time, opposition to data centers is growing as well. Those words of protest were from Long Island residents last week when a rumor spread that one of the centers may be set to open. Each center can use enough energy to power 15,000 to 50,000 homes, according to industry monitors. Local officials told residents that no data center was coming, but it's all behind this new development.
We needed a pause.
State Senator Kristen Gonzalez talks about her bill, which would freeze state approval of data centers for a year.
New Yorkers want to make sure that if we're bringing on hyperscale centers, the biggest of the biggest, that we're not the ones footing the bill, that our utility bills don't go up, that our water isn't used, and that our communities are protected.
Joining her state Senate bill, a similar measure in the state assembly, the lower house, because so many New Yorkers have spoken out against data centers.
What will that do to us, our drinking water, to the agriculture?
Both bills appear to have enough votes to pass, but will a vote happen before the legislature leaves for summer break this week? The bill's sponsor says that's in part up to you.
We need every New Yorker reaching out to their legislators and to leadership to let them know that they want to see us pass a data center moratorium bill.
And in Bay County, Florida, home to Panama City, county commissioners are facing their own data center debate. This comes after other Florida counties start the process of putting a one-year moratorium in place, and in others, flat out banning them. Grace Velez from our sister station in Panama City has the latest.
Bay County commissioners are moving towards addressing the data center issue with a 6-month moratorium, but there's a procedural process they need to follow first.
We're going towards the moratorium. We're following the law to make sure that we do this the correct way so we protect the property of Bay County and the citizens of Bay County, and then going forward from there during that 6-month period that we enact the right laws to make sure that this cannot come in at these large scales that everybody is pretty much in agreement that we don't want here in our community.
At Tuesday's Bay County Commission meeting, Commissioner Daniel Raffield motioned to ban data centers completely, but without a second, that motion died.
Everyone that lives around these are having issues. They're having noise pollutants, air pollutants, quality of life. That is our number one thing that we have to protect. Other than our resources, is our quality of life here in Bay County. And I will stand on those things until I'm gone.
Raffield says he will continue to advocate for a ban. All commissioners agreed while they don't want to see large-scale data centers in Bay County, they need to move within legal parameters.
None of us are interested in these large data centers coming, so that's the main thing that everybody needs to understand. We're not for the large data centers that have like 5 people in them. That's not what this is about. This is about ensuring that we make a fully informed decision that does not negatively affect our community down the road either.
Commissioners voted to approve a resolution which plants what's legally known as a red flag until a moratorium goes into effect. That red flag lets anyone who does apply know that the county is looking at changing their land regulation codes. However, commissioners made it clear no one has turned in any application or given any notice relating to a data center proposal so far. Reporting in Bay County, I'm Grace Velez, News 13, Panhandle Strong.
As for the next steps, the moratorium will go before the Bay County Planning Board, and the public will be given notice of public hearings before it comes back to the board for a vote at their first meeting next month. Meanwhile, with Vermont's legislative session now finished, some Democrats are voicing frustration over a bill Governor Scott vetoed late last week. It has to do with regulating those large AI data centers should one choose to come to Vermont, and Democrats failed to get enough votes to override the governor's veto. Matt Holderman from our sister station in Burlington has details on the bill and thoughts from both sides.
I think that Governor Scott is really out of step with how Vermonters feel about data centers.
Vermont State Rep Kathleen James says she won't be running for re-election later this year. And unfortunately for her, her tenure at the State House ended on a bit of a sour note this past Friday. Governor Phil Scott vetoed a bill that James's committee supported that would regulate AI data centers should one come to Vermont. And when House Democrats tried overriding that veto, they came up just 7 votes short.
Quite frankly, it was a great bill, and I don't really know what Governor Scott was thinking. I think he made a huge mistake.
James and some fellow Democrats, along with a few progressives and independents, say Vermonters are concerned about data centers and the impacts they have on the environment, power grids, and people's electric rates. She says this bill would have guaranteed Act 250 would be triggered by the construction of a data center, and it would have required the leaders of that facility to follow strict water and energy permits so as to not harm nearby communities. But Governor Scott and other Republicans argue that legislation could have impacted facilities beyond data centers, and some of them think it would just be more unnecessary regulation.
We couldn't get an Amazon distribution facility developed here in the state. No large data center is going to come to the state of Vermont.
I have not heard any concerns from constituents about data centers. Instead of focusing on a problem that is never coming, we should focus all of our efforts on a problem Vermonters do face.
After Republicans voted to stop that veto override, Democrats shared their frustration, saying the bill clearly defined data centers and not other facilities, and they called this a missed chance.
Here we had an opportunity to protect Vermont ratepayers from electricity price increases, and we have failed. The hypocrisy will not be lost on Vermonters.
In Montpelier, Matt Holderman, Fox 44 News.
Meanwhile, along Pennsylvania's Lake Erie shoreline, Northeast Township leaders say they're working to get ahead of the game when it comes to data center development. The Township Planning Commission is now actively looking at ordinances restricting where data centers can be built. Jack Sabell from our sister station in Erie was at the most recent commission meeting and has more on the proposals.
For many communities across the country, the development of data centers is uncharted territory, especially for rural areas. Recently, several local townships have been working to set guidelines on where data centers are allowed to be built if a developer had interest. Last week, Waterford officials discussed restrictions. Now Northeast leadership is taking action.
Data centers are kind of a new thing, and so we have to do a lot of research first. We know that they require a lot of acreage, a lot of water, and that they can be noisy. It's our duty to draft an ordinance that is in the best interest of Northeast Township.
The Planning Commission is responsible for drafting a data center ordinance that the township supervisors would ultimately vote on before it becomes official. The commission is referencing a template ordinance from Erie County as well as examples from neighboring municipalities to draft their own legislation. Monday night, the supervisor meeting began with an update from the commission on how they're moving forward. They also took questions from concerned residents. After the meeting, we caught up with some people outside that had concerns about what unrestricted data centers might mean for the area.
There's 3,900 of them now and growing, and the people that live around them wish they never would have had one. They do everything from damage their water to jack their electricity prices up. No data centers, period.
They should keep in mind that anywhere you put it's going to destroy that land. That land, you're not going to be able to do anything else there.
The Planning Commission told us they can't refuse data center infrastructure, but can build the ordinance with restrictions that can limit where they go.
It would have to be either commercial or industrial as far as our zoning laws go.
The township is planning public meetings and open houses as the commission develops their new restrictions.
Meanwhile, in Box Elder County, Utah, new developments regarding a controversial data center of their own. Utah Senate President J. Stewart Adams is now calling for a 75% cut in the proposed Box Elder Stratos data center. Senator Adams says he sent a letter directly to Kevin O'Leary, the lead developer behind the project, calling for a reduction in the data center's size from 40,000 acres to 10,000 acres. Adams also says he's requiring any excess water from the data center be dedicated to the Great Salt Lake. Finally, Adams is demanding more transparency, conservation commitments, and protections for Utah's natural resources. Let's shift gears now and talk about the midterm elections. In another win for the Trump administration, the U.S. Supreme Court gave the go-ahead for Alabama to use a congressional map favoring Republicans. That map had been at the center of a court battle. Scott Minshaw from our sister station in Birmingham has the latest.
With the Supreme Court's decision last night, all eyes now turn to congressional districts 2 and 7, which are the seats held by Democrats Shamari Figures and Terry Sewell. Secretary of State Wes Allen says this new map is a 6-to-1 map, meaning he believes that one of those seats will flip Republican.
The Supreme Court, by its decision of lifting that injunction, has really sanctioned having racially discriminatory maps in the state of Alabama and throughout the land.
Congresswoman Terry Sewell's district, along with districts 1, 2, and 6, will be impacted by the 2023 Livingston map. Secretary of State Wes Allen praised the Supreme Court's decision, saying the state is prepared for the upcoming special primary election on August 11th.
We're going to work really closely with the boards of registrars and the probate judges and all those election officials in these counties to make sure that the August 11th special election is ready to go.
Secretary Allen tells us preparations are already underway for the upcoming special primary election. He says that all candidates who will be running in that special primary election will be qualified by the end of business today. Reporting in Montgomery, Scott Minshall, CBS 42 News.
A little closer to home, Sooner State voters will be headed to the polls next week with a long list of candidates awaiting them. Several Republicans and Democrats are vying for the U.S. Senator from the Sooner State. Meanwhile, all 5 U.S. representative seats are up for grabs. The governor's race also features a crowded field with 9 Republicans and 3 Democrats on the ticket. Voters will also decide primary races for Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, State Treasurer, Superintendent of Public Instruction, and numerous state senator and state representative races, among others. Again, the Oklahoma primary takes place Tuesday, June 16th. This fall, all 125 members of the Kansas House of Representatives are up for re-election. Capitol Bureau reporter Braden Day explains why Democrats believe they could pick up a good number of those seats.
The filing deadline for candidates who are running for the Kansas House of Representatives has now come and gone, and we now know that Democrats will be running in 103 of those races. That's the most we've seen here in Kansas in nearly 30 years. Now remember, Republicans still have big numbers in the House. They occupy 88 of the 125 seats. That gives them the power to override vetoes from the governor with a 2/3 majority vote. Democrats need to pick up 5 seats this fall in order to break that supermajority. So can they do it? Republicans I spoke with today say no. They are confident that Kansans still favor the GOP, but Democrats believe that could be changing, and they think the boost in candidates is a good sign it could.
We're really excited about that. Yes, yeah, I'm really excited, I guess. Stop and think about, we have candidates to 103 districts, I think the final number was. You know, and all of these districts are different. I mean, they really are. Everything that's out there, we need to be clear and make sure that we bring it home, and we will win in November.
As you know, it's not the number of names on the ballot, it's who wins at the ballot box. And as Republicans, we believe we have the better message to get our candidates across the finish line. I think we're well poised to maintain our supermajority. They've done an incredible job these last few years, keeping some of the crazy liberal agenda, the Washington agenda, in check.
Candidates are now officially campaigning across the state. To find out which candidates are running in your local district this fall, you can visit the Kansas Secretary of State's website. And remember to mark your calendars. The primary election will be on August 4th this year, and the general election will be on November 3rd. Reporting from the Capitol, I'm Braden Day.
Meanwhile, voters in Maine head to the polls this week, where Democrats have targeted a seat held by a longtime GOP senator in their bid to retake the upper chamber. But their top candidate comes with some controversy. News Nation's Nick Smith has more.
Yeah, trying to keep up with the controversy centered on Graham Plattner is like following a game of whack-a-mole. A new one continues to pop up. Right now, Graham Plattner still looks like the likely Democratic nominee to take on Republican Senator Susan Collins. The Democratic Socialist, oyster farmer, and combat veteran has racked up endorsements from the likes of Bernie Sanders, but he is now under new scrutiny. Reports have surfaced about sexually explicit messages he sent to other women during his marriage. His wife, Amy Gertner, reportedly discovered the texts and flagged them to Plattner's campaign last year. On Tuesday, Plattner was on Capitol Hill. He met with Democrats, including Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
As I said, I endorsed Graham Plattner. We're going to beat Susan Collins and take back the Senate.
Plattner himself ducked out on the cameras, leaving from a back entrance away from where reporters had been gathered, then quickly hopped into a waiting vehicle. That tells you how sensitive this moment has become. Democrats in Maine are trying to not stop this. They're actually stuck with him. And right now, they are mostly trying to hold the line. The controversy has not done much to slow his popularity in the polls. But Maine uses ranked choice voting in statewide primaries. The other Democrat in this Senate race is Governor Janet Mills. She suspended her race back in April, but is now reminding voters that her name is still on the ballot. On the Republican side, Susan Collins has been the reliable name for nearly 30 years. So this race is really solid for her. The Republican is expected to win. The race asks the question of whether voters will go with a steady hand or a newcomer identifying with the nation's economic discontent. Collins' post as Senate Appropriations Committee chair makes her the gatekeeper to ship billions of dollars to the Pine Tree State, something a Plattner win would not be able to replicate.
Constitutional amendments will also be on the ballot this coming November. For example, Missouri voters will be considering a question aimed at eliminating the state's income tax. Meanwhile, in Ohio, voters will decide whether or not to add voter identification requirements to the state's constitution. The proposal is moving rapidly through the State House, but has drawn plenty of criticism. Ohio State House reporter Jesse Bethea has a look at what both sides are saying about that proposal.
Debates over asking Ohioans to add a voter identification requirement to the state constitution have drawn more opponents than supporters to the State House. That doesn't seem to concern House Speaker Matt Huffman.
We know in this case that an overwhelming number of Ohioans think this is a good idea. No matter what the issue is, you could get 78 people to show up and testify against it or for it in a committee meeting.
Public polling shows most people support the idea that voters should have to show a photo ID in order to cast a ballot, but that doesn't mean the issue is top of mind for most Ohio voters, especially since Ohio law already requires photo IDs at the polls. House Minority Leader Donnie Isaacson predicts that will cause some confusion when voters are asked to pass this amendment in November.
They're going to go and be like, wait, I thought this was already the law. Is this not the law already? No, it is the law. The legislature wanted to put it in the Constitution for fun.
Among those who have testified in favor of the amendment are representatives from national conservative groups like Jason Sneed of the Honest Elections Project. Sneed says that while Ohio's voter ID law is one of the strongest in the nation, laws can always be repealed when the legislature changes.
Future legislatures can decide to repeal an extraordinarily popular law, as was done in Virginia, as has been done in Hawaii. So the risk of backsliding is real, and I think, again, this is really by giving the people the opportunity to decide if this really is something foundational enough to put in the Constitution.
Jen Miller with the League of Women Voters of Ohio says that's exactly why she has concerns about turning such a policy into a difficult-to-change constitutional amendment.
Things change regularly, and something as detailed as a voter ID law should not be resolved through constitutional amendments. Instead, we need to have the flexibility to do that in law.
And Oregon voters may decide whether or not to ban hunting and fishing on November's ticket. The People for the Elimination of Animal Cruelty Exemptions Act, or PEACE Act, currently has more than 125,000 signatures in support of the measure, exceeding the 173,000 required to be added to the ballot. If passed, the law would criminalize injuring or killing animals, including killing for food, hunting, and fishing. This includes slaughtering livestock and poultry, wildlife management practices, scientific or animal research, and breeding practices for livestock, domestic, and equine animals. While the signatures have not yet been verified by the Secretary of State's office, supporters of the measure say they plan to continue submitting additional signatures until the July 2nd deadline. After that, the Secretary of State will work to validate the signatures and determine whether the measure will be headed to the ballot. Quote, "We felt moved to file this petition after recognizing that the animals we currently injure, kill, and forcibly impregnate have the same needs, such as for affection, play, and understanding that our companion animals have." That quote is directly from David Michelson, one of the chief petitioners. Although our campaign understands that we are currently killing animals to meet important needs of our own, such as substance, stability, belonging, and others, our campaign also believes it is possible to use a different set of strategies, ones that don't involve killing, that can meet our needs while also simultaneously meeting the needs of the animals, Michelson later went on to say. As our sister station in Portland previously reported, opponents say hunting and fishing are a crucial part of Oregon's economy. Hunting, fishing, and wildlife watching activities account for $1.2 billion in spending and supported over 11,000 jobs. That's according to a 2019 study completed by Earth Economics. Organizations including the Oregon Farm Bureau and the Oregon Cattlemen's Association oppose the petition, calling it an attack against ranchers and pet owners. Another direct quote, "Most concerning for our agriculture, IP28 would redefine sexual assault to include routine breeding practices, potentially applying this classification to livestock, equine operations, and even domestic pets. This would expose farmers, ranchers, veterinarians, breeders, and animal owners to criminal liability for standard humane practices that are essential to animal health, food production, and genetic management." That quote is from the Oregon Farm Bureau. They shared that on their website. The passage of IP28 would effectively turn Oregon into a no-kill or harm sanctuary state, eliminating in-state meat, dairy, and animal protein production, the statement continues. The petition has already drawn national attention, including coverage in Field and Stream magazine. Texas Governor Greg Abbott even weighed in. Governor Abbott said, "This is exactly what happens when Democratic socialists take power. They come for your way of life," he wrote on Facebook. And again, Abbott going on to say, "Not in Texas. As governor, I guarantee the right to hunt and fish are protected in our state constitution, and I made constitutional carry the law of the land in Texas," end quote. We will, of course, continue to follow these and other ballot questions locally and across the nation right here and on our website. Until next time, thank you for going on the record with us.